Hi, in this video tutorial I'm going to show you how to create parallax scrolling in Unity 5. So I'll just give you a quick demo here of what it's going to do when we finish this project. This one we've got 3 layers at different distances from the camera, and it scrolls them with the first the fastest and the one at the back the slowest. The first thing we're going to do is create a Unity project. So give it a name such as Parallax, and it's going to be a 3D, so make sure you've got the 3D selected and then create project. Now once this is created, we want to set it to be Android or iOS. This will work on the PC as well, so if you don't have a device you don't have to check it that it will work on there. So just to do that, we'll go to build settings. Always a good idea to do this at the beginning of your project so that all the assets get updated as they're added. If you start with a really big project and try to switch platforms, it will take quite a long time. Okay, so we've done that. If you want to make it stay in landscape, you can set it here in the player settings. I'll just put it on landscape right. Doesn't really matter, and shut that. So we're now in Android in landscape, so it says that up there. Okay, the first thing we need to do is to bring in some images that we're going to have on our planes. So I've prepared 3 images, which I'll bring them in and have a look at them. Okay, so we're just importing those images. Here they are. Okay, so we've got grass 1, grass 2, and grass 3. So the white part that you can see here is transparency. Okay, now if we put those onto a quad, excuse my crow friends that are outside the window. They're very rude. Game object. What are we going to do? 3D object, and we're going to put it on a quad. So we can see our quad here in the camera view, but we can't actually see it in the scene. So the best way I find to do that, rather than rotate all over the place, is to grab our camera and then actually make sure that you're looking down the camera like that, so then you know that you're looking in the right direction. Otherwise it gets a bit confusing. So here's our quad, and we're going to take our grass texture and dump it onto that quad, which it'll want us to do by selecting the quad and then drag and drop that over there. Okay, so here it is. Let's just zoom in a bit there. And you can see that there isn't any transparency. So we want to set our shader to unlit and transparent to give us that effect. Then with that selected, hit the R key just to resize it a bit. Now, just before we go any further, you need to make sure that your camera is in orthogonal view. So select it. Because we went 3D at the beginning, it will automatically be in perspective, as you can see here. So we just go back to orthographic, and we can then resize this panel. We could also move the camera closer, I guess, but I'm almost there now. I'm going to fit this panel into our landscape scene, as you can see there. And you might want to select the camera at this point and set the background to black. Make it a solid color. Okay. Right, so where's that panel? There it is. All right, now what you can see is this line. Now there's 2 things that you can do to make this bigger. If we had a really long scene like this and all you wanted to do was tile these trees across, it's just a matter of in your shader for that, actually just setting this X to some other value like 5. So you get 5 lots of repeating patterns across here. The problem with that is that you get this line. And I know we had this line before, but I can get rid of it. But if we do it this way, you can't get rid of that line. The only way to get rid of that line is to select the texture itself that you're using, and in the texture settings, you want to put the wrap mode to clamp. Now, if we apply that, oh, look what happened. If we just move over to here, you can see that that line has gone, but it clamps the image so that it won't repeat. So if we just grab that quad again and don't tile it, you'll be able to see that that line has gone in the game view, which is nice, but it also means that our quad is stretched unbelievably long. So let's just bring it back down to maybe, say we wanted about that size. If you want multiple tiling of this texture, what you're going to need to do is to duplicate it. So that's just a matter of selecting it and Control D. But hit the W key to move it, and then I can just create them like this. And you can add as many as you like. I think we'll just do with 3 for now. So we now have 3 quads up here in the hierarchy. I'm going to create an empty game object, not in there, out here. And let's call it front panel. And to that front panel, we're going to make all of our quads children so that we keep them all together. So if the front panel moves, then all those quads will move with it. Okay, so that's our first panel that will be scrolling. What we're going to do now is to duplicate this panel. Okay, Control D, and just move it back. Doesn't really matter how far back it goes, because you're in orthographic view, you won't see any difference in this game here. You will if you move it like this, which is what will happen when we're working with our parallax scrolling. But for now, let's just do that. And this is now going to be the mid panel. So let's call it mid panel, like that, which now has another 3 quads in it. Okay, so these quads now have to have a different material, which has grass 2 on it. So in the materials folder, we're going to duplicate the material. And, oh, I don't know where that drag screen came from. Let's not worry about that. I'll come back to that. So this is material 2, which we want to put on this here. This grass 2 texture. So we'll just drag that over. We also then need to apply material 2 onto that quad, and that quad. Okay, so now you can see we've got, oops, different there. Notice that line has come back. That's because the second grass material hasn't been clamped. So you need to go into the inspector and clamp it and hit apply to make that line go away. Right, then we do this again a 3rd time. So let's grab the mid panel, Control D, and we'll call it the back panel. And now we've got 3 new quads. Let's first of all move it back. and make a new material. So we can copy that one. And on that new material, we'll use the grass 3. Okay, and then we will grab our grass 3 material and apply it to each of these quads like that. Okay, so now we have 3 different panels that we're going to parallax scroll through. Just before I continue, I've got to clamp that final material, this one here, to get rid of that line. Apply that. Okay, we're ready to go. So if we go back into materials where I had this drag screen left over from last time I tried this, I'm just going to drag it into assets. So what I'd like you to do now is to create a C# file and call it drag screen. So the contents of this I'll now go through. Okay, so open it up in your editor, and this is what you'll have to add in there. So you should already have this code by default come up in your C# file, as well as an update and a start function. So we're going to populate it now. The first thing in this code is a game object array called layers, and this will take all of the layers that we've put into our scene. And so I've got 3 at the moment, but you could have 10 if you so wanted. So it's we'll adjust to that. There's also a few float values here. We have one for the drag speed. So this is how fast the mouse or a finger sliding across a screen is going to affect the parallax scrolling. If it's too fast, you want to turn this value down. If it's too slow, you want to turn this value up. The next value of mouse pos x start is a calibration for when you click on the screen or when you put your mouse down, and that's when it will start measuring how far it needs to drag the layers across the screen. Next, we have the minimum drag x and the maximum drag x values. These values are the extreme distances that the panels can be dragged before they go, the camera moves beyond the end of them, because you don't want to be able to drag them outside of the camera range because it will just look bad. So you need to clamp them at some point. Now, to get these 2 values will depend on where you've put your camera in relation to the panel. So if we just go into our scene here and just rotate it around to find my camera, click on the camera. Okay, so here's the camera here, and we can figure out these clamp values. If we grab the camera and we slide it along to this very end here as far as we want to go. So we probably don't want it to drag out to there because that's going to go past the end of the panel and look a bit daggy in our game. So let's say there. Now let's have a look at the camera's position at that point. And here we've got minus 42. Okay, so minus 42 at one end. Then we're going to drag the camera all the way to the other end until we've run out of panels. Bring it back a little bit. And it's 42. Oh, so it's nicely smack bang in the middle. Minus 42 and 42. So back in our drag screen code here, we can set this to minus 42 and 42. So that's now going to clamp those panels. So let's move down to the update function. Have a look what's in there. This first if statement, input.getMouseButtonDown, is going to register when you've clicked on the screen or when you've touched the screen. It's a nice way of testing for that sort of thing. And then we're going to grab hold of the XPOS start position and set it to the current mouse position. So A mouse down is going to work with your finger and also with the mouse, which makes the code nice and portable between mobile and your desktop machine. Okay, so the next part of this code is going to test that there's been one touch on the screen and that the touch phase is equal to touched move. So that means that there's one finger on the screen and it's being dragged by this move. If it's being dragged, that's when we want to actually move our panels. Now there's an or statement in here. I'll just put a new line in so you can see it. It also checks for input mouse button down so that we can do the same actions with our mouse. Okay, let's just scroll down a little bit more. And we're grabbing hold of the change in position of our drag. If it's on the mobile device, we're using a get touch delta position X. If it's on the computer, then you're going to have to calculate what the change in the mouse position is by taking away the starting mouse position that we recorded earlier from the current mouse position with each update. We then go into this for loop, and what this for loop is doing, although it's probably not clear because it's going slightly off the screen here, is see if I can just maybe bring these down a bit. Okay, so this should also be indented just to make it a bit more readable. Okay, so for each layer that you've added into this script, which means 3 for us, we're going to calculate the new X position of that particular layer based on where it is, plus the change in the mouse or your finger, multiplied by your drag speed, and then also multiplied by a little bit of a factor that is related to the position of the layer in the array. So this will make the forward-most layers move much quicker than the back ones. The new X value that is calculated based on the drag speed of the X position is then clamped using the mathf.clamp, and it's being clamped so that it doesn't go beyond the minimum drag X and the maximum drag X that we calculated earlier by dragging the camera back and forward across the panels. This new X value is then applied to the first panel, which is going to be the last panel in our array. And then it's also applied to all of the other panels as well. Now we're doing this separately by making sure that the first panel clamps exactly in between the two min and maxes. But we're going to let the other panels go a little bit further, or maybe not quite as much, I should say, because it's the front panel that's going to move the fastest past the camera. So when it reaches its maximum and its minimum, you want it to stop, and you want it to stop, and you also want the panels at the back to stop as well. If you don't do it this way, all of the panels will slide across independently, and the first panel will stop, and then the second panel and the third panel will keep sliding separately, and it just looks strange. So this is the code for that. Then we have the final brackets for all of our class and that. So if we just go up here again, so you can see this is all inside the update function. So this bracket down here is the end of our update, and then we have the end of our class. Okay, so with all of that now coded, you want to save it and switch back to Unity. The drag screen code is then put onto the main camera, Now I've already got it there. I'll just remove it again. Okay, and I'll show you. So we drag this onto the camera. We then set the number of layers. In this case, we've got 3, so we'll set that at 3. Now, the first element is the panel at the very back. So we take our back panel and drop that there. Our mid panel, put that at element 1, and then our front panel to there. Okay, so now we're right to actually run it and have a look at it. Press run and move it, and we get this type of effect of the parallax scrolling.